Hello, listeners. This is Kat. Welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This is the continuation of Like, Comment, and Romance. This will be Part 6, Chapter 6, entitled Soba. There were no animals in the entryway of the shelter, though the sound of barking filled the small area. There was a counter at the far end of the space, and a room behind it. A woman was in front of the counter, talking to Shinso, and she looked toward them as they entered. Wow, you weren't kidding! Maravidy-san, Shouto-san, it's such an honor to have you here. Thanks. We're here for a cat, Todoroki said, glancing around the room. Uraraka cleared her throat, so he added, Please. Of course, absolutely. Please, follow me. There was a door on the left wall, and the woman opened it and stepped through. Shinso and Uraraka followed her first, then Todoroki and Midoriya. The cages were smaller than he expected. The woman was talking to Uraraka and Shinso something about an application and a fee. Shinso said something about references, smiling wryly, and the woman laughed. Everything sounded a bit distant. The cages they were just smaller than he expected, was all. But it was normal. He could tell from Uraraka and Shinso's demeanors that it was normal. There was a tug at his sleeve. He looked down into concerned, gentle green eyes. Shouto-kun, are you, sorry, Midoriya said, letting go of his sleeve. But, are you okay? He nodded. Yeah, I'm fine. I just didn't think. He looked around the room. Every cat he could see was in a cage. It had been naive of him to expect anything different. The cages are a little smaller than I anticipated. There are so many. I think the cages are small so they can fit more. More cages mean fewer cats get turned away, Midoriya said, his voice soft. It's not pleasant, but it's safer than living on the streets, I guess, especially in the summer when the pavement gets hot. Water's probably harder to find, too. Todoroki nodded. That made sense. Do you know if they let them out? They don't have to stay in the same room all day, do they? Well, there aren't a lot of rooms to begin with. Letting them near the dogs would cause a commotion. He bit back a curse. He was being stupid. I didn't mean room. Sorry. The cages. They get let out? Midoriya was quiet for a second. I think sometimes. And I think the volunteers play with them if they have the time. But there are a lot, and it takes time to spay and neuter them. So, some of them can't intermingle freely. Even if they're separated by sex, they might fight. If they used to be strays, males especially, I think they can, be prone to fighting. And some of them might be sick, like worms and stuff. They treat them here, but that also takes time, so I'm letting them near each other. He nodded, telling himself again that he was stupid. They were cats, so they probably didn't mind being alone all day, separated from their moms and siblings. Most of them probably weren't even from the same litter, and even if they were, cats probably didn't care about that, right? Though surely they cared that they didn't get to play and have fun, and they probably hated being stuck in the same room all day long, and they probably knew that other kids didn't live like this, that they got to go outside and play with their brothers and sisters while they were stuck in that stupid, God-forsaken room, working until they couldn't even throw up anymore, and all the while his dad was shouting and, Shouto-kun! He didn't jump, though Midoriya had clearly startled him. A warm hand settled against his own, and he clasped onto it without thinking. Are you okay? Midoriya asked. You're breathing a little, we can go back outside if you want. No, he said quickly, looking away. I'm fine. Sorry, I just got lost in thought. He glanced up and down the room. There were so many cages. I don't know where to start. Midoriya sidled a little closer to him. Well, he paused to lick his lips. There are some things to consider. Do you and Uraraka-san, do you know if you want a younger cat or an older cat? He looked around and found Uraraka. She was still talking to the shelter worker, nodding as she listened to whatever the woman was saying. We decided we'd rather get an adult cat than a kitten. Okay, that's a start. And that's good. Kittens are usually adopted the quickest, I think. People like kittens. The adult cats have a harder time getting picked, so, if it bothers you that they're stuck in the same place all day, maybe you want to look at the cats who've been here the longest. Yes, that sounds like a good idea. How do we know? We can ask, Midoriya said, tugging at his hand. He let himself be pulled along as Midoriya led him toward the others. The conversation stopped when they approached. Uraraka and Shinso both looked down, rather obviously, at his and Midoriya's joined hands, but didn't say anything. Excuse me, Midoriya said quietly. We were wondering if you could show us which cats have been here the longest. The worker perked up. Yes, absolutely. Please follow me. she said, and Uraraka and Shinso had joined them as she walked them to the far side of the room. She gestured to a cage. This is our longest tenant resident. His name is Soba. That's my favorite food, Todoroki said without thinking. He looked to the worker. Soba, I mean, not cats. I don't eat cats. Uraraka tilted her head back and covered her face, groaning. Why are you like this? She didn't think you meant cats. I just wanted to be clear. Please forgive him. He's a bit sheltered, Shinso said. Todoroki blinked. He was sheltered. Just like the cats. That phrase suddenly made so much more sense to him. The worker laughed. It's fine. It's kind of funny to hear a famous person like you say such a simple dish. I would have guessed something fancier. Todoroki didn't know what to say to that, so he just stared at her, feeling a bit awkward as he waited for her to tell him more about the cat. She cleared her throat and looked away. Right, well, this is Soba. He's been here for about 3 years. We think he's 5 years old. As you can see, he's missing an eye, but please don't let that dissuade you. A lot of people think he looks scary, but I can assure you he's very sweet once he gets to know you. Todoroki pulled Midoriya closer to him, so Uraraka had more room to stand beside them as they looked in the cage. A one-eyed cat looked back at them. He was very light orange-colored tabby, and his eye, which was on the right, was green. We named him Soba because we sort of thought he looked like a bowl of soba, like he's the noodles and his eye is the green onion. Todoroki nodded, seeing what she meant. Soba was a good name. How did he lose his eye? When he was brought in, his eye was cut and infected, so it needed to be removed. We don't know what caused the injury, though. A lot of times wounds like that can happen from getting attacked by another animal. It's hard to say, though. Can we take him out of the cage? Uraraka asked. The woman had nodded and sat about, unlocking the door and scooping Soba up. He meowed as he was picked up, but didn't seem upset. If you'll follow me, there's a play area over this way. We can let him walk around in there and you can get to know each other. They entered a small room attached to the main cat area. There were a few scratching posts, each with a cat already on it, which was a small relief to see, and a small basket on the floor with some toys in it. The woman knelt down on the floor, and they all followed suit. Todoroki hadn't quite thought about the fact that he'd been holding Midoriya's hand the entire time. He let go hastily, muttering a soft apology. Midoriya muttered back an equally soft reassurance that he didn't mind. The worker set Soba down in front of her, and he stayed there, eyeing them without moving. Todoroki, I'm going to be honest. This cat is basically you. Todoroki looked away from Soba for a moment to look at Shinso. Because his missing eye matches my scar. I guess there's that, but he's also standoffish until he knows a person, which is like you, but then he's sweet, right? Uraraka interrupted. The woman nodded as Uraraka held her hand out toward the cat, to see if he would sniff her. That's like you too, Shouto. Not really. Uraraka kept her hand extended, but turned to look at Midoriya. Yamomo-chan told me that one time she had bad cramps and asked him to go get medicine. He came back with 3 different brands, 2 face masks, ginger ale, and a whole cake. I didn't know what brand she wanted. Fuyumi was always particular about that. Everything else is also stuff Fuyumi usually wanted if she had cramps. And the fact that you'd go get it all is sweet. It's not. It's just normal brother stuff. My brothers wouldn't go get me a cake if I had cramps, Shinso pointed out. Although a cake probably wouldn't help with the types of cramps a boy gets. Right. Brothers aren't that nice, except Ida-kun. Point is, you're very sweet to the people you care about. You can also argue that you're the human equivalent of a bowl of noodles. Sort of boring, but reliable. A comforting presence. And Soba can be served hot or cold, Uraraka added. A more literal interpretation, but sure, Shinso agreed. You are Soba, and so is this cat. At that moment, Soba finally took the initiative to sniff Uraraka's hand. Apparently satisfied, he walked over toward her, rubbing his body against the appendage before plopping down on the ground in front of her. The worker, who had been looking increasingly awkward as Uraraka and Shinso had tried to convince him he was a kind-hearted noodle person, smiled widely. That's a great start. He'll actually probably warm up to you first, Uravati-san. It's not that he dislikes men, but we found he has a slight preference for women. Shinso made a clicking noise with his tongue. So maybe less like Todoroki than I thought. Midoriya made a choking sound, quickly turning his face away as he tried not to laugh. His shoulders were shaking, just like earlier. He seemed like he tried hard to be polite. He thought of what Shinso had said about him being shy and skittish. Maybe he and Midoriya were both a little like Soba. Well, I'm sold, Uraraka said as she pet Soba's head. A preference for women is just the edge that I need to compete with the human heating pad over there. Is he cuddly? He is. He likes sitting in laps and snuggling. Just like Todoroki. It really is like seeing double. Shut it, Shinso, Todoroki said, glaring at his friend and avoiding looking at Midoriya. He turned to face the worker. Does he like to play? Yes, not as much as he did when he was younger, but he plays. I found he has a preference for the kind of ball that has a bell inside. We have those, Uraraka said, smiling. Kachan's balls. Phrasing, please, Shinso quickly responded. The woman found some balls and had offered them to Todoroki and then excused herself. She stayed in the room but made herself busy with the other cats so they could spend time with Soba. He wouldn't play at first, contented to sit in front of Uraraka and observe them, but eventually he started batting at the balls that came near him. At one point, a ball was tossed near Todoroki, and Soba, finding himself in close proximity, gravitated toward him, climbing up into his lap. No, Soba, Uraraka whispered. He's a smelly boy. Why do you want an overly warm lap anyway? It's summer. Love me instead. I'm sure he'll love us equally, Todoroki said. He laid a hand atop of Soba's head, and the cat purred. Are you decided, then? Shinso asked. Oh, for sure. If they don't let us have this cat, I'll go villain, Uraraka huffed. And no one wants that because, let's face it, I'd be unstoppable. I'd like to adopt him, Todoroki agreed. The shelter worker had given them their space, but there was only so far away that she could go in the small room. Undoubtedly, she heard them both. But she had the grace to pretend she hadn't been listening in, waiting another minute before she approached them and feigning ignorance as she asked them if they were considering Soba. She asked if they wanted to meet any other cats before making their decision, but they felt confident. Soba was their cat. There was a lot of paperwork to fill out, so Midoriya and Shinso stayed behind to play with the other cats while Todoroki and Uraraka filled out forms. There was a 7,000 yen fee, which Todoroki paid. He also made a 55,000 yen donation, and Uraraka donated another 30,000. Midoriya and Shinso came into the room just as they were finishing up. You don't actually have to fill out the references section, the old woman said. You're pro-heroes, we can waive that, I think. We usually visit the home beforehand as well, but we can forego that as well. Thanks, Todoroki said. He didn't like being treated differently, and honestly he thought it was irresponsible of the shelter to do so. He knew firsthand that being a pro didn't necessarily make someone a good person, but a home visit sounded sort of awkward and unappealing. Shinso already told them what to do to make their apartment cat safe anyway. He decided to let it slide. He could still fill out the references, though, like everyone else. We're already writing, so we might as well just fill out the references. I'm putting Yagi-sensei, Uraraka said, shooting him a quick wink. He looked discreetly at the worker, but she didn't make any indication that she recognized the name. They'd be in for a surprise if they actually decided to call. Who should I put? He felt weird putting one of his friends down. Unlike All Might, their names were common knowledge. The shelter workers were probably all lovely people, but he didn't really want to risk their phone numbers getting out. Shinso would probably be fine. He wasn't famous, and they would already have him on file from his cats. You can put your boyfriend down if you want, the worker said. There's no rule against family or significant others or anything like that. He glanced up. My boyfriend? She blinked at him, confusion evident on her face, and pointed behind him. Him? Is he not? He glanced behind him, where Midoriya was standing, face a bright, fluorescent red. Oh, he said, twisting back around. He could see why she would think that. They'd been holding hands earlier. No, not yet. He started writing Shinso's name. And then he stopped. The dead silence of the room enveloped him as he let his own words sink in. He looked up at the worker. No, is what I meant to say. Just no. Nothing else. She looked back at him with wide eyes. He knew he should probably turn around and face Midoriya to tell him that he didn't mean to say that, but he couldn't bring himself to face whatever expression Midoriya was looking at him with. He was so expressive. He seemed so easy to read. If he was creeped out or offended, which Todoroki imagined he probably was, it would be plain as day to see on his face. I misspoke, Todoroki said. He could feel his face burning hot, not literally, thankfully, as he ducked his head down and furiously scribbled down Shinso's contact information. He slid the packet of papers across the table and stood. Is that all? Uraraka slid her papers across the table as well, albeit much less hastily than he did. She stood, and he could feel her looking at him, but he didn't want to face her either. Oh, yes, sorry, the worker said in a fluster as she took their packets. That's all. You'll get an email about his chip, and, remember to make that vet appointment, just for a general checkup. Get him acquainted with the vet and all. Yes, of course, Uraraka said. And do you remember everything I said about introducing him to things slowly? Yes, Todoroki said. Okay, give me a second, I'll go get him. And then she left, disappearing into a small room behind the back counter. A second worker had appeared, Well, they were midway through their packets to check Soba over before they took him, and had taken him into the back. Uraraka picked their carrier up off the floor and placed it on the table. She laughed, and it was forced and awkward. Wow, Shouto, I can definitely see that you're nervous about becoming a cat dad. Isn't he funny? When he's nervous, he just says stuff. Doesn't even think. He was grateful for her attempt, but nothing could save him from that blunder. Zuko's the same way sometimes, aren't you, buddy? Yeah, all the time. I'm sure lots of people say things they don't mean when they're nervous, and especially when you're put on the spot, like just now, Shouto-kun. He laughed, and it was even more forced than Uraraka's. She's just... What a crazy idea, that she thought that. Of course you misspoke. That was probably startling. Before Todoroki could respond, the worker came back, holding Soba. Here he is. It's honestly unbelievable to think this is goodbye. I'm so happy he's finally found a home. We'll take good care of him, Uraraka said, smiling gently as she opened the door to the carrier. I have no doubts. The worker talked to them for a little while longer, emphasizing that Soba might act very standoffish and independent in the beginning, but assuring them that he'd grow comfortable with his new home and family with time. Eventually, though, they found themselves heading back outside. Shouto, let me have the carrier, Uraraka said. Todoroki reluctantly handed it over. Don't float him. Don't float him, God, like I'm still a kid. He's fine, she said, rolling her eyes. But, I do have one more request. The train station isn't far, and I kind of wanted to talk to Shinso Nichan privately for a minute, so do you two mind walking ahead? Todoroki nodded. He wasn't always the best at recognizing a helping hand when it was offered, but Uraraka's were easy to read. He was being given time alone with Midoriya. Sure, no problem, he said, looking down at Midoriya expectantly. Midoriya looked away and nodded. Yeah, that's fine. We can walk ahead. Uraraka and Shinso held back, whispering to each other while Todoroki and Midoriya started walking, the latter keeping at least half a step behind. At first, Todoroki worried his stride was too long to keep up with, but when he tried slowing down, Midoriya quickly adjusted to match his pace. Izuku, he began, guilt weighing heavy in his voice. Midoriya looked so uncomfortable, and it was all his fault. I'm sorry, Midoriya interrupted. I shouldn't have. I literally just said before we entered that I keep invading your personal space, and you'd think I wouldn't forget that fast, but no, I held your hand and dragged you around, and she got the wrong impression, because what else would she think, two people holding hands, and you could have just shaken me off, but you didn't because you're just, super nice. I'm sure that was super embarrassing for you to have someone think that you were dating me, so I'm sorry. I promise I wasn't trying to, I was just trying to, because you seem sort of upset, so... I was. Or maybe upset isn't the right word. I was just remembering something unpleasant. I was glad you held my hand, so thank you for that, actually. And the idea that people would think that we were dating, that doesn't bother me. It definitely doesn't embarrass me. If anything... He paused, thinking of what Shinso had told him about letting Midoriya get to know him first. He was being too forward. Never mind. What I wanted to say is I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say something so presumptuous and disrespectful. You must think I'm arrogant, saying something like that. I hope you'll accept my apology. He looked over and found green eyes, charmingly wide with surprise, staring back at him. Presumptuous? I don't think... It's not really presumptuous, though, if you didn't mean it right. Or arrogant, you just misspoke. Right. I misspoke, but... He paused to think. Hypothetically, if someone said that they were being presumptuous and arrogant, would you accept their apology? Hypothetically? Color was slowly spreading across Midoriya's face. Yes, sure, I would, hypothetically. And, hypothetically, would you be opposed to maybe getting to know that person better? No, I wouldn't be opposed. Hypothetically, I think getting to know that person would be nice, but I'm not really sure if this person would, hypothetically be interested in getting to know me. He is, Todoroki said quickly. Or he would be, hypothetically. Midoriya laughed at that, quick and nervous, and looked away. He tucked the curl behind his ear and didn't move to fix it when it immediately popped back out. I wasn't really sure what to expect meeting you. Not hypothetically, I mean, he added, casting him a quick, shy glance. I asked Hitonian once what you were like. What did he say? He said you were a dork. He snorted. Shocking. Well, what do you think? Am I living up to those expectations? Midori smiled at the ground. It might have been wishful thinking on his part, but Todoroki thought his expression seemed kind of fond. Or maybe tender. Well, he paused for a moment, worrying his bottom lip. You did dress up like a dad to impress a cat. He found himself flushing slightly. Right. That was dumb. I wouldn't say dumb. It was more, dorky, but in a cute way. Sorry, it's just sort of sweet. You said Shinzo was a doting cat dad, and I guess I just want to be that too. I'm not always the best at expressing myself, so I guess I'm worried Soba won't understand that I want to take care of him and be his his dad. That's really... Feeling eyes on him, he looked over at Midoriya, who hastily looked away the second their eyes met. I'm sure Soba will understand. Even without the dad clothes. I mean, I think things like that, caring and, love, I think they get through. If the feelings are sincere, if anything, I think an animal would understand that best. Soba, for instance, all he'll want from you is love and care. You won't have to impress him, or try to be someone you're not. So you shouldn't worry. If you're just sincere and are mindful of your differences because cats are sort of particular, then he'll love you, I'm sure. Do you like animals a lot? Midoriya looked up at him, flicking his gaze to and away a few times. I do. You can be yourself around animals. It's sort of a relief, knowing an animal will never judge you or have a problem with you for being different. Todoroki nodded. I was never allowed to have pets growing up, and I didn't have friends until high school, so I was never around other people's pets. I never really thought about it before, but that sounds nice. I didn't have friends growing up either, except for Kanchan for a bit, Midoriya said quietly. And our apartment, my mom and me, our apartment didn't allow pets, so I guess I was sort of the same. I did always like animals, even when I was young, but I didn't really understand how nice it was to be around them until Hitonian or Hitoshi moved in. They're calming. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure it'll take time before we feel like family to each other, but I don't mind waiting. Midoriya watched him for a bit out of the corner of his eye as they walked. If he was trying to be discreet, he wasn't doing a good job. After a few moments, he cleared his throat, looking out at the passing traffic. Have you ever heard of catios? Catios? Yeah, it's like a cat patio. Catio. People get screens and build little outdoor spaces for their cats so they can go outside and they don't have to worry about them getting out or anything. Hitonian was thinking of maybe building something on our balcony, or, well, he was more hoping I could, I think. I'm not super great at building or anything, but I'm kind of handy. Not in an impressive way. I'm not trying to say that. I just don't have a dad, or, of course I have a dad, technically, everyone does, but he wasn't around, and things would break, and I wanted to try and help my mom because it's stressful being a single parent, or I imagine it is. So I tried to do my best to help with whatever I could, and I sort of became good at some things, a little bit. I'm so sorry, I'm getting off topic. I don't mean to talk so much. It doesn't bother me if you talk a lot. I like listening, and you have a nice voice. Oh, okay, he squeaked. Thank you. But, thank you, yes, I was saying, my hands are good at things. Todoroki watched, both eyebrows raised, as Midoriya's facial expressions showcased what he could only describe as the 5 stages of grief. Good at building things, he yelled, face scarlet. With my hands. So, what I was saying is, I'm looking into building a catio sort of thing on the balcony so Banjo and Kazooie can hang out in the garden and be safe. And, well, you said you wanted a garden too, and wanted help, and if you changed your mind, that's absolutely fine, but, if you did want help, or maybe if you also wanted a catio for Soba, I can build one for you. That would be really... You don't have to. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm really rude. I'm sorry. He ran a hand through his hair. But, if you think about it, and you decide that maybe that's something that you'd like, I'd do it for you. But you'd have to be able to contact me to let me know, and going through Hitoshi, seems kind of superfluous. So I guess I was wondering if maybe you wanted my number? Todoroki stopped walking. You can say no, Midoriya said as he stopped as well. No. Or, yes, I'd like your number is what I mean. He said as he tried to pull his phone out of his pocket. He fumbled it, and, after sloppily juggling it in the air for a second, just barely managed to catch it. Let me just... He tried to ignore how his hands were shaking as he created a new contact. He put in Midoriya's name and then handed his phone over. Here, you can... Right, sure, thank you, he said as he accepted the device. He looked down at the screen and froze. Did you mean to put... for my name? Did I spell it wrong? No, or, maybe you put, well... He turned the screen towards him, and Todoroki could almost feel his blood stop circulating through his body. It was for the best, really. Dying now would be perfectly fine. He'd written, Todoroki Izuku. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I was just... I just wrote my name so many times on the forms, so I guess without thinking, I just wrote it again. Midoriya nodded as he turned the screen back toward himself. Right, that makes sense. Sorry, I was just surprised. No, I'm sorry, you shouldn't be. I'm the one who did the surprising thing. Midoriya laughed, and for once he didn't try to stifle it. He just laughed, smiling down at Todoroki's phone as he typed in his number. Todoroki forgot about dying for a few seconds as he watched him. He was beautiful, honestly. Here, Midoriya said quietly, as he gave Todoroki his phone back. Todoroki handled it gently as he looked down at the new contact. Midoriya hadn't corrected the name. Thanks. I'll text you so you have my number too. What should I write? Anything. Sorry, anything, like hi or an emoji, or that would be fine. He nodded and clicked on the messenger icon. He didn't really use emojis, so hi would probably be best. That was kind of boring, though. He opened up the emoji keyboard and scrolled through it quickly, stopping when he got to the row of hearts. Yaoyorozu, Uraraka, Kaminari, and Kirishima all used heart emojis pretty casually when they texted. Kirishima said they were manly. Sending a heart wouldn't be weird or too forward, probably, and Midoriya had said in that convention video and in his analysis of him that he liked his hair, so before he could second-guess himself, he selected the white heart and then the red heart and sent them. A moment later, Midoriya reached into his pocket. Got it, he said as he unlocked his phone. Sorry if it's dumb. I was just sort of thinking, with my hair, it seemed like a good idea. Midoriya grinned down at his phone as he started creating a new contact. No, it was a good idea. I like it. Your name. Should I put Midoriya Shouto? He gave a stilted laugh. Like a joke? Sorry, I'm just being dumb. No, I like that. It's funny. Go ahead. It'll be like a joke just between us. Like an inside joke. Exactly. Midoriya's smile turned wobbly as he typed in the name. Once he hit save, he pocketed his phone, and Todoroki did the same. Feel free to text me whenever, about catios or gardens or anything else. If you want to tell me how Soba's doing or something, maybe, I wouldn't mind. But you don't have to. You can just text me when you need me if you want, but you can also text me whenever about anything. I'm fine with everything and whatever. Right, me too. You can text me whatever you want, about cats or All Might or K-pop. Just whatever is fine, if you want. Okay, Midoriya said quietly, smiling shyly at him. Todoroki smiled back. Hey guys! Uraraka's hand clapped down heavily on his shoulder, and his feet immediately lifted off the ground. Oh, whoops, hold on, Nichan, take Soba. Midoriya grabbed hold of his hand, while Uraraka handed Shinso the cat carrier. She took her good sweet time, so by the time she was steepling her hands together to release him, he was completely upside down. He crashed down suddenly, toppling onto Midoriya. They nearly went sprawling to the ground, but Midoriya managed to hold him up. Sorry, he said, suddenly hyper-aware of just how muscular Midoriya's arms were. He placed a hand on Midoriya's shoulders to steady himself as he stood, and he swore he almost swooned. He was no stranger to being in the presence of muscular men, but God, there was just something different about a rippling physique when it was coupled with such a cute face and endearing personality. Also, he just noticed that Midoriya had freckles on his shoulders, and how on earth did he miss those before? They were adorable. It's fine, Midoriya murmured. Sorry, Shouto. Guess I accidentally float things sometimes because I'm so inexperienced. Ah, she was still grumpy that he told her not to float the cat carrier. That's not what I meant. Don't know what you mean. I think you have complete mastery over your quirk. You always do impressive things. Uh-huh. He pursed his lips. And you're brave. Uh-huh. And I like that I can confide in you, and you're good at taking pictures. Thank you, Shouto. You flatter me too much. Isn't he a doll? She asked, looking at Midoriya. So sincere. Yeah, Midoriya stammered, tensing. Maybe not. A doll is sort of, but sincere, I think so. Speaking of dolls, Shinso said as he handed Todoroki the carrier. Did you see that bus that went by earlier, Zuko? Midoriya's shoulders relaxed and they all started walking again. The train station was in sight now. A bus? No, I wasn't really paying attention. It had an ad on the side for that scary movie about the dolls. Midoriya perked up. The Dolls of Zombie Island? Right, that comes out soon, doesn't it? Midoriya nodded. Yeah, this week. Do you like scary movies, Deku-kun? I do. What about you, Todoroki? Shinso asked, giving him a meaningful look. I like them. I haven't seen a ton, admittedly. Movies weren't allowed. He paused, cringing. Sorry, I keep repeating myself. My childhood was... He paused again, thinking. Boring was definitely not the right word. There wasn't a lot of entertainment, he said. But when we lived in the dorm, Sero and Tokiyami sort of made it their mission to ensure I saw all the horror classics, by their definition. I liked most of them. The artistry behind the special effects is often impressive. I like that too. I love reading about the special effects, or watching interviews and just getting to hear about how it's all done. Whenever practical effects are used, it's so often really creative, and it's just so impressive that someone would come up with those kinds of ideas and solutions when things don't work out. Have you seen Friday the 13th? For one scene, there was this pump that was supposed to shoot blood, but it broke, but they only had one shot to do it, so last minute someone got under the bed and blew through the hose, and the timing... Zuko. Red crawled across his face. Sorry, I just ramble. It's cool, though, that you also like that stuff. Although maybe not to that extent, watching interviews and stuff. Sorry, I'm just nerdy about everything I like, sort of. It's fine. I like hearing about that kind of stuff. You don't have to keep apologizing for talking. Shouto's a quiet person, but he listens really well, Uraraka chimed in. One time, Ida-kun and I were arguing about M&Ms, because I said the blue ones are the best, and he said they all taste the same. They do, Shinso interrupted. Shinso-ni, I will fight you. Anyway, Shouto was walking with us, and I didn't even think he was paying attention, but then, 2 years later, he gave me this gigantic bag of all blue M&Ms. It wasn't even my birthday. He just found out that you could get bags all in one color and bought it for me. Have I mentioned how thoughtful he is? He's so thoughtful. Whatever guy manages to nab him will be so lucky. He's just grade A boyfriend material, and so handsome. Can you even believe he's single? I have mentioned he's single, right? Midoriya looked like he was mere seconds from just running away. You, sort of implied, last time. Please ignore her, Todoroki said, sending her a withering glare. They arrived at the train station, and they all paused, standing together outside the gate. Uraraka was standing next to him, and Shinso and Midoriya were across from them. It couldn't be more clear that they were about to part ways, and Todoroki hated it. He felt like they'd only just met up. They had to get Soba home, though. All the hustle and bustle of the city was probably scary for him. I was trying to say earlier, Shinso said, shooting Uraraka an unimpressed look. If you guys like scary movies, why don't we all four of us go see that Zombie Dolls Island? The Dolls of Zombie Island. Sure, whatever. How about we all go see it? He looked at Todoroki. Hey, Neon, I'm sure they've got better things. I'd love to, Todoroki said quickly. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just think it sounds like a great idea. Yeah? Midoriya asked, and he was smiling directly at him, and it was so bright and hopeful, and fuck, how is it even possible for a person to be that gorgeous? Yeah, he said, internally wincing at how breathy his voice sounded. Having his breath literally taken away by a guy's smile was too embarrassing for his dignity to handle. Sounds like a great idea to me, Uraraka said. Cool, our schedules are probably more flexible than yours, so how about you two let us know when you're free, and we'll take it from there. I'll text you, Todoroki said to Midoriya, who flushed as his smile grew somehow even brighter. Okay, that'd be good. It sounds perfect. I'm excited. This'll be fun, Uraraka cheered. It'll be a good time, Shinso agreed. We'll see you then. Let me know if you need any help with Soba. Aw, thanks, Shinso-ni-chan. We'll see you guys later. Midoriya was still smiling, though he was also biting down gently on his bottom lip. He had his head tilted down just a little, and was looking up at him. Shinso elbowed him, and he jumped, biting down on his lip and wincing as he mindlessly licked at the sore area. Come on, they have a train to catch. Say bye, Shinso said. Bye-bye, he said distractedly in English, as he brought a hand up to rub at his lip. His eyes suddenly widened as he slapped a hand over his mouth. Just like your videos! Deku-kun, you're so cute! I didn't mean to. It's just sort of a habit. I meant to say, bye, but, normally, so bye. Thanks for letting me tag along today. I had a good time. I did too, Todoroki said, taking a step closer to him. Thanks for your help. We really found Soba because of you, so thanks. I'll text you. Oh, okay. So, I guess I'll see you soon. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Me too. Bye. Bye, I'll see you soon. I'll see you. No. Shinso grumbled as he grabbed Midoriya's shoulders and yanked him back. We're not doing this again. Todoroki, Uraraka, it's been real. Congrats on the cat and parenthood or whatever. Let us know when you're free. We will. Bye-bye, Deku-kun. Bye. It was nice. Hito-neon, stop pulling. Bye. Bye, Todoroki said, raising a hand in farewell. Midoriya gave a small wave back, before stumbling as Shinso tugged him along, urging him to follow. They watched their retreating frames for a few moments. Shinso must have said something snarky because Midoriya smacked his arm, and then They headed toward the ticket gate. I honestly can't tell if you two hate saying goodbye to each other or you really, really like it. What do you mean? Nothing. Don't worry about it. You're both just oblivious. He nodded, accepting that. He wasn't sure about Midoriya. He seemed too intelligent to be oblivious, but he'd been told he was oblivious by enough of his friends to accept that as the truth. They boarded the train and found a space empty enough to fit both of them. They were fairly certain cat carriers were supposed to go underneath the seats, but they wanted to keep Soba in their sights, so Todoroki just held the carrier on his lap. He was watching as Uraraka poked her finger through one of the holes in the front gate, murmuring soft nonsense when his phone vibrated. Holding tight to the carrier, he took his phone out of his pocket. He still needed to text All Might back, he suddenly remembered, and checked his messages. He had one unread text from Midoriya. He opened the message, heart pounding, and immediately smiled at the contents. Midoriya had sent him a green heart. All right, listeners. This concludes Chapter 6 of Like, Comment, and Romance. Chapter 7 will be next. Hope you all are still enjoying. Let me know your thoughts and reactions, and as always, thank you so much for listening.